Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gauranika, Jaya Gauranika, Jaya Gauranika, Jaya Gauranika. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Giri Govardhan. Jaya Radha Govardhani, Radha Govardhani, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Govardhani, Radha Govardhani, Shri Radhe. Okay, so we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna Kirtan Prabhu mentioned that Bhagavad Gita didn't finish off a couple of verses from yesterday, 54, 55. So for the sake of consistency, we'll finish those two verses off and then we'll do the one that's on the board now. So I'll start with text 54 from Adi-lila chapter 9. After describing the Lord's distribution of the fruit of love of Godhead, I now wish to describe the different branches of the tree of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 55. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi-lila 9th chapter, describing the tree of devotional service. So we'll start with Adi-lila chapter 10. This chapter describes the branches of the tree named Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we'll start with text number 1. Sri Chaitanya Paramboja, Madhu Kebhyo Namo Namaha, Katanchid Ashrayad Yesham, Swapitad Ganda Bhagbavet, Sri Chaitanya Paramboja, Marupebhyo Namo Namaha, Katanchid Ashrayad Yesham, Swapitad Ganda Bhagbavet, Sri Chaitanya Paramboja, Marupebhyo Namo Namaha, Katanchid Ashrayad Yesham, Swapitad Ganda Bhagbavet, Sri Chaitanya Paramboja, Marupebhyo Namo Namaha, Katanchid Ashrayad Yesham, Swapitad Ganda Bhagbavet, Sri Chaitanya Paramboja, Marupebhyo Namo Namaha, Katanchid Ashrayad Yesham, Swapitad Ganda Bhagbavet. Any ladies like to chant? Shri Chaitanya Paramboja Madhopebo Namo Namaha Anybody else? Shri Chaitanya Paramboja Madhopebhyo Namo Namaha Karanchidashraya Desham Swapita Ganda Bhagavate. You do the word for word. Shri Chaitanya, Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Paramboja, the lotus feet, Madhu, honey, Pebya, unto those who drink, Namaha, respectful obeisances, Namaha, respectful obeisances, Katanchit, a little of it, Ashrayat, taking shelter of, Yesham, of whom, Shwa, dog, Api, also, Tad Gandha, the aroma of the lotus flower, Bak, shareholder, Babet, may become. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Let me repeatedly offer my respectful obeisances unto the bee-like devotees who always taste the honey of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If even a doggish non-devotee somehow takes shelter of such devotees, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. Very poetic, isn't it? Purport. The example of a dog is very significant in this connection. A dog naturally does not become a devotee at any time, but still it is sometimes found that a dog of a devotee gradually becomes a devotee also. We have actually seen that a dog has no respect even for the tulsi plant. Indeed, a dog is especially inclined to pass urine on the tulsi plant. Therefore, the dog is the number one non-devotee. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement is so strong that even a dog-like non-devotee can gradually become a devotee by the association of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Shivananda Sain, a great householder devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, attracted a dog on the street while going to Jagannath Puri. The dog began to follow him and ultimately went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and was liberated. Similarly, cats and dogs in the household of Srivasta Kaur were also liberated. Cats and dogs and other animals are not expected to become devotees, but in the association of a pure devotee, they are also delivered. Omagana Tramanandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Umitamina Tasma Shri Gurube Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So let me repeatedly offer my respectful obeisances unto the bee-like devotees who always taste the honey of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If even a doggish non-devotee somehow takes shelter of such devotees, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. So, what did Prabhupada say? That even a dog can take part in this chanting? Huh? So we're having a bit of dog kata in today's verse. Dogs. We have a dog called Ziggy, so he's very fortunate. I take him chanting my japa with me, so hopefully he's getting some benefit from doing that. And we see there's so many examples of the animals getting the mercy of devotees. I think, was it Janananda Prabhu who's written a book about animals and Krishna consciousness? Some of you may have read that. It talks about different ISKCON sort of facilities around the world, and how animals have become devotees. I think there's some stories, I haven't read it for a long time, but I think I remember a story about on a farm somewhere there was a dog who would come and take darshan every day of the... It was here, was it? Was it Hari Rama? Hari Rama. Anybody remember Hari Rama, the dog here? You remember Hari Rama? So what did he do? He'd come and take darshan, he would come and listen to the class, so what would he do?
He'd come and pay the basis.
Really? Okay. How long ago was this?
Back in the 80s.
Back in the 80s, okay. So Hari Rama, the new Govardhan dog. And I think I remember somewhere, I know that when you go to India, you go to different temples in India and they just let the cows roam free over there, and a lot of the time they'll walk into the temple and they're greeted very nicely and they're fed different prasadam. I remember Keshava was very brave when I was on tour with him a couple of years ago, and then one of the cows was passing water in the temple and he put his hand underneath and took a sip and he goes, you'll never get sick. That was his realisation. You know, he's a braver man than me, but it's coming from Keshava, so it must be true. So, yeah, we know that, I was supposed to show some pictures, shouldn't I? I've got some pictures here. There we go, Jarikanda Forest. So it's obviously a very famous pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was travelling through South India, and he was passing through this forest, the Jarikanda forest, and he had one of his servants travelling with him at the time, and it's explained that he was in such ecstasy as he was passing through this forest that all of the animals in the forest became absorbed in chanting as well with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So of course Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a Maha Bhagavat, the topmost devotee. So because he was chanting in such a, chanting so purely, that was the influence he could have on the animals. So there's obviously an artistic depiction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing and chanting through the Jarikanda forest. Has anybody here been to Jarikanda forest before? I think it's still there in India as far as I know. Yeah, you can still visit there today. So yeah, very, very famous pastime. You can read this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivering the animals of the Jarikanda forest. And obviously today we were hearing about Shivananda Sain, who also a dog became attracted to the association of Shivananda Sain, and I understand later on that this dog also became liberated and went back to Godhead as well. So all animals, all living entities have benefited from hearing this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And sticking with the dog theme, you probably may have heard the story about Radhanath Swami. He talks about it's in a North American Indian tradition. And sometimes they say it's two wolves or two dogs, and these two dogs are inside of all of us, and one dog represents the... I think I've got a picture for this one as well. There we go. Story of two dogs. So yeah, that goes. You might know the story, but it talks about how there's two dogs, and one dog represents all the bad qualities, lust and envy and greed and regret and enviousness and all these lower qualities, and the other dog represents the good qualities, the godly qualities, the divine qualities of goodness and compassion and tolerance and forgiveness, honesty, compassion, these sort of qualities. And to explain that these dogs are constantly fighting inside all of us, and the dog that will win the fight is the one that we feed. So we all have these qualities inside of us. I know I do. Speaking for myself, I certainly have plenty of those bad qualities. So we can consciously feed either of these two dogs. So we can see now in the current world situation we're in is that there's a lot of fear amongst people now. It's in the media, fear. And you can see how it's affecting people. People are very, very disturbed. I heard recently that Lifeline, which is one of these call centres that you can call to if you're disturbed, that they've had the highest rates of calls ever in the history of being around, and what we're not hearing about is suicide rates are very, very going through the roof, not just in Australia but around the world at the moment. So people are very, very disturbed, and they're feeding that lower nature with fear. through the television programming and the media and the politicians. So we can see it's very, very powerful when people are controlled by fear. It affects how you behave. It affects how you think about yourself. It affects how you see others. So it's not healthy, actually. Very, very unhealthy state of consciousness to be in. It talks about, was it Kama, Krodha, Madha, Moha, Matsaya, Bhaya, lust, anger, illusion, envy, fear and greed, the 6 enemies of the mind. So we have to be very diligent to guard against these lower qualities. And we can feed them. It's easy to feed these things. So we can talk about being fearful and what makes us fearful, and we can get right into it. So devotees, of course, don't focus on that. A devotee was trying to focus on the godly qualities. And of course, in this month of Kartika is a great opportunity to feed the godly qualities. This is the month of Srimati Radharani, so we can just try and forget about the material world as best as we can and focus on Srimati Radharani and the Adi-lila, and develop those godly qualities of compassion and tolerance. And bhakti ultimately is what we're trying to focus on, is developing our attachment and devotion towards God. So we have to take the opportunity when these months of Kartik appear. In fact, Rupa Goswami says that during the month of Kartik that you should do a special service, whatever that may be, but you should do something as a special service during the month of Kartik. And I'm sure all of us can do something extra, whether it's chanting extra rounds or reading more or associating with devotees more. Trying not to get into fights and arguments. That's an austerity. So there's something we can all do over the month of Kartik to take advantage of it. And because it's a special month, that whatever devotional service we perform in the month of Kartik, then the benefits of that are magnified. So we should all take advantage, especially now, in the next few weeks, while we have the opportunity to do that. So the process of bhakti, as we were talking about, is a process of transformation and distribution, simultaneous transformation and distribution. That's a quote from Charitamrita Swami when he's talking about what bhakti yoga is about. Is simultaneously we have to transform our own hearts, as we're talking about all the unwanted things, the anartas, or chaitodapana marjana. We have to cleanse the heart, purify the heart, and simultaneously distribute this knowledge to others as well. That's the process that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given. That's the Yugadam Harinam Sankirtan Yagna is process of simultaneous distribution and transformation. So it's something else that we can focus on during Kartik, is this distribution process. Now is a very, very ripe opportunity for preaching Krishna consciousness. I know that Keshava and Manigriva, who managed the farm down in Victoria, were saying recently they did some sort of retreat down there in Melbourne, and obviously in Melbourne and Victoria they've been going through a really, really hard time over the last 2 years. Have had the longest lockdowns in world history. They hold the world record for lockdowns, and it's had a massive psychological impact on the people in Victoria. In fact, I was reading some demographics in the last 12 months. I think something like 45,000 people have left the state of Victoria just so they could fly to greener pastures, supposedly. And though Manigriva and Kesha were saying that when they had this retreat, that people were really looking for shelter, really, really looking for shelter. So they were naturally just asking questions and being inquisitive about, why am I here for, and what's the goal of life, and what's the purpose of life. And so it's a very, very great opportunity for presenting Krishna consciousness to people. In fact, I was reading with Rupa the other night, and we were reading a nice purport. I think it might have been by Hridananda Swami. And he was making a point which really struck out to me, how the environment has to be favourable for someone to appreciate something. So the example given is that we can't appreciate fully the ghee wick during the daytime, but at night time you can appreciate more the ghee lamp because the environment is right, so the light is more prominent and you can appreciate that. Or when you're hungry, you can appreciate a feast a lot more than when you're not hungry. When the belly is full, you can't appreciate a feast, but when you're feeling hungry and the tummy is empty, you can appreciate it. So sometimes the environment has to be right for people to show gratitude and appreciation. So at the moment, it's a very nice environment for people to be hungry for this knowledge and to understand higher truths and know why am I suffering for. And that's the beginning of human life, actually. Was it Rupa Goswami or Sanat Goswami said that people glorify me as being a great person, but tell me why I'm suffering for. Sanat Goswami. So that's the beginning. Like Prabhupada was talking about how even a dog like non-devotee can gradually become a devotee in the association of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. So a dog isn't conscious of its suffering, is it? They have no idea they're suffering. Like sometimes when I go for my Japa walks up Old Lismore Road, just down the road, and I look at the cows and the horses in the paddock, and they're just happy eating on their grass, and there's flies all over them, and horse flies stinging them, but they're not conscious that they're suffering. So the human form of life is meant for becoming conscious of that. First become conscious, then become Krishna conscious. That why am I suffering for? Why is life such a struggle? Why is it so difficult? So people are in that state of consciousness now. So it's a very, very favourable time for going out. Padma Lochan and the crew who are travelling at the moment, I've been shipping out books to them, and they're saying that they're running out of books, and so I'm trying to catch up with them to ship books to them. I ship them to one place and they go, no, we've moved. And I go, where do you want me to send them to? And I try sending them there, and then they've moved again. So it's hard keeping up with them, but the books are just going out at the moment. So very, very great time for going out and distributing books. The BBT has just got a new publication in of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which was printed in Germany, and it's a very, very, very high quality new edition of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we've got 1,500 sets sitting in the warehouse just waiting for devotees to go out and distribute them, and we just got 25,000 copies of Krishna book in and another 20,000 copies of the hardbound Bhagavad Gita in. So our warehouse is getting very, very full. We need to make more room. So please distribute these books, go out, take advantage of it, very much so. It's a great month to do that, and the environment, as I was saying, is very, very favourable as well. So people are receptive to hearing this message of Krishna consciousness. So the opportunity is always there. And once again, we'll go back to the dog theme again. So there's that famous verse that's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Swavid Varo Hustra Karai Samstuta Purusha Pashu Nanyat Kana Pato Peto Jatu Nama Gadha Graja. Anybody know that verse? Rupa, I'm sure you know it. Yeah. What's the verse?
Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those leaders who do not surrender to their personality.
Yeah. Praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So Prabhupada elaborates a little bit on that there. The general mass of people, unless they're trained systematically for a higher standard of life and spiritual values, are no better than animals. And in this verse, they have particularly been put on the level of dogs, hogs, camels and asses. Modern university education practically prepares one to acquire a doggish mentality with which to accept the service of a greater master. After finishing a so-called education, the so-called educated persons move like dogs from door to door with applications for some service, and mostly they are driven away informed of no vacancy. As dogs are negligible animals and serve the master faithfully for bits of bread, a man serves the master faithfully without sufficient rewards. And then Prabhupada gives a further elaboration on, or gives an analogy of the hogs and the camels and asses. So the Dvipada Pashu, the two-legged animals, that if in the human form of life they don't use it for a higher purpose, then that's considered from the Shastric point of view, not my point of view, but the Shastra's point of view, is Dvipada Pashu, that two-legged animals. So even though they have a human form, because they're not developing or evolving their consciousness, and thinking and hearing about Krishna, the Shastra compares him to animalistic consciousness. So that's what the human form of life is meant for. Tato Brahma Jignasna, that now you have acquired the human form of life, you must make inquiry into higher subject matter. So that's what human life is meant for, is for cultivating God consciousness and reawakening, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, is reawakening what's already inside of us. Jiva Sarupaya Krishna Anichadas. So as Prabhupada would say, that's not an artificial imposition upon the mind. So, as Prabhupada was talking about today, that for someone to get bhakti, then they actually have to get the association of a Vaishnava. So that's actually the secret ingredient for people taking to Krishna consciousness, is that they have to come in contact with a devotee. Prabhupada gave the example of an iron rod. When you put the iron rod into the fire, then the iron rod takes on the qualities of fire. So similarly, when people come into the association of devotees, they get influenced with bhakti. That's the mystical process of bhakti yoga, is that by being in the sangha of devotees, then that bhakti is transferred into the heart of a non-devotee, and that their journey of self-discovery begins from that point when they come into the association of devotees. And obviously in the Bhagavad Gita it's explained that when you're in the association of devotees, then you have to hear from devotees and make inquiry in a submissive manner as well. So that's the secret to advancing in spiritual life, is to hear from devotees, serve devotees, inquire from devotees about spiritual subject matter and so forth, and that's how you gradually progress in the process of Krishna consciousness. So as Prabhupada is saying here, that's how that dog-like non-devotees gradually become a devotee in that sangha, that association. So yeah, devotees have to be liberal-minded, that it's easy to go into, I guess you could call it silo consciousness, when you're just worried about your own development and your own spiritual progress, and you just focus on that. But we have to go beyond that and develop more of a broad-minded consciousness, that we have to feel some degree of compassion for the suffering of others, and we want to somehow alleviate that suffering of others by sharing Krishna consciousness with them in a nice, friendly, palatable, relatable way. And that's what Prabhupada set up the International Society for Krishna Consciousness for, is to create a sangha, or an association, where people can come to and hear about and learn about Krishna. So I think we're all recipients of that sort of mercy. I mean, when he's talking about dogs here, it's probably he's referring to me, actually, that the dog-like non-devotee can gradually become a devotee by the association of a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. So yeah, he's talking about me there, like I was dog-like. I'm quite honest about that. I had no good qualities. I was living a very inauspicious lifestyle. So I was fortunate that I came into the association of Prabhupada's books and into the association of devotees. And obviously still a work in progress, but that's the secret. I'm just a mercy case, the fact that I came across this by some great fortune in this lifetime, that I came across Krishna consciousness and devotees in Prabhupada's books in this life. So makes you feel a bit humble when you kind of see things like that. Good for me, because I'm not very humble. But it's a nice meditation, that we have so much to be thankful for and so much to be grateful for, and we should never forget that. A very, very special thing to come into the association of devotees. So there's a quote by Prabhupada, just to wrap things up. Krishna does not agree to award devotional service to merely anyone. Krishna can easily offer a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only through the mercy of a pure devotee. That's from the Nectar of Devotion. So that's one of the characteristics of pure bhakti yoga, is that it's very, very rarely achieved, actually. To become a pure devotee is very, very rarely achieved, because that means that Krishna comes under your control. It's one of the unique attributes of bhakti yoga, is that you can actually bring the Supreme Personality of Godhead under your control through your devotion. So that's why it's very rarely achieved, that Krishna actually willingly agrees to come under the control of his own devotee. And we can see that with the Adi-lila that we're meditating on this month, where Mother Yashoda is trying to bind the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is running after him with a stick, and Krishna's enjoying that. Actually, he's taking on the mood of being a submissive young child because he's getting pleasure and enjoyment from that. So this is one of the profound attributes of Krishna conscious philosophy, is that God cannot come under the control of his devotee, because generally in a lot of religious traditions is that it's very much so a mood of awe and reverence, that God is all powerful, God is great, and we're very small. So that's nice, that sentiment is nice, but it's not the topmost understanding of God consciousness. Swami's Nectar of Devotion, it brings us to the highest, topmost point of God consciousness, and that is that God willingly Krishna willingly comes under the control of his devotee if the devotee's love is pure enough, and Krishna will agree to become submissive to that love. So that's why it's explained, it's one of the attributes that it's very, very rarely achieved. So a nice meditation there, that only through the mercy of a devotee that can devotional service be attained. And I think the nice point I reflect on that Krishna Prabhu made is that in order to go back to the spiritual world, is that we have to be invited back into that Sangha. It's not that we can force ourselves into Krishna's pastimes, but in Krishna Loka we all have a position. Whether we're a blade of grass or we're one of the cowherd boys or whatever we may be, is that we all a part of a village from Vrindavan. So whichever village we're a part of or we're from, if that's what our service is to Krishna, then the residents of Vrindavan have to want to invite us into their Sangha. So, as I was saying, that has to come about through our sincere cultivation of Krishna consciousness and developing these godly qualities. So, when you're developing these godly qualities, Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Thakur said, don't try and see Krishna, but act in such a way that that he wants to see you. So in other words, you have to cultivate these qualities which are going to be attractive to Krishna. That's what Krishna consciousness is about, is purifying the heart. So we're developing these godly qualities to attract Krishna into our lives more and more and more. And as I was reading with Rupa the other night, that even at the beginning stages of Krishna consciousness, that Krishna's hand is still in our lives. It's not that we have to get to a certain point where Krishna becomes involved in our life, but even from the beginning stages of bhakti yoga, that Krishna is involved in our lives. And I know that as you have more life experience and devotional service and you get older, that you can see that Krishna's hand is in your life. And sometimes you're going through whatever you're going through in life and you can't understand why, but you can reflect back on that and realise, that was Krishna's hand. I can actually tangibly see that was Krishna involved in my life. So Sruhidam Sarvabhutanam, that Krishna is the friend of all living entities. So Krishna's there with us. Sometimes we may not be aware of it, but nevertheless he's definitely there. So nice things to meditate upon. So I'll stop my ramblings. Thanks for staying awake. Does anybody have any questions or points or anything that they wanted to contribute or add?
There's a nice word in the verse, prabhu, buck, shareholder.
In today's verse?
Yeah.
That reminded me of that verse, Daya Buck, right? When you become, what is it? It's in the Nectar of Devotion, is it? Daya Buck, that it becomes your rightful Bhagavatam? Yeah, what is it? You become the rightful heir to the inheritance of Krishna's kingdom. You become a rightful claimant to that.
I just thought it was quite quaint of Prabhupada using sort of a corporate analogy there, a shareholder. I was going to ask about this very poetic verse, the word at the end there. Anyway, in the translation, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. The doggish non-devotee somehow takes show of such devotees. He enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. Can you say something more about can we take that as Krishna? And what's your view of that? The aroma flower, the aroma of the lotus flower, is that lotus flower Krishna poetically?
If even a doggish non-devotee somehow takes shelter of such devotees, he enjoys the aroma of the lotus flower. Tad Gandha, the aroma of the lotus flower. Buck, shareholder. Yeah, so I think it's, I guess you could say it's based on that Daya Buck principle from the Bhagavatam, that by taking shelter of devotees and performing devotional service, then you enjoy the benefits of that. So you could say it's an analogy, comparing the Sangha of Krishna to an aromatic lotus flower. You could take it literally as well, not just as an analogy, but as a literal sense, that the aroma of Krishna's lotus feet. So I think it could be taken both ways there. Tadganda, the aroma of the lotus flower. Buck, a shareholder of the lotus flower, of the aroma of the lotus flower.
Thank you. We can take it as the lotus feet for Krishna.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Thanks, Prabhu.
So you're showing a picture of Lord Chaitanya liberating all the animals in the Jharkhand forest.
Yep.
How by the mercy of the Supreme Lord and pure devotee, and all different animals can become Krishna conscious. So, and you were talking about Janardana Maharaj's book, how animals got the mercy, many different animals got the mercy of Krishna. But it seems like out of all the animals, and Prabhupada mentions in this verse, even lower animals like cats and dogs, even though they're non-devotees by nature, they can become liberated. But it seems like the dogs especially get the mercy maybe more other animals. And Prabhupada says in this verse that the dog is the number one non-devotee because he passes urine.
Of the Tulsi, yeah.
So, maybe like Lord Chaitanya is the saviour of the most fallen, right? So maybe the dog also, because it's like the most fallen living animal, most non-devotee. That's why he seems to get more mercy than other animals, and more dog stories than other animals.
Yeah, well, you see the dogs in India are pretty unfortunate, aren't they? When you go to India, it's like, my God, some of the species of dogs over there are pretty low birth. Yeah, very unfortunate. Yeah.
We hear of, Yudhisthira who didn't want to return to the spiritual world, the dog that followed him up, the Himalayan path. So the mercy of the devotee can create a great opportunity for anyone.
Just quickly, a couple of dog stories. Apparently there was a dog who used to come pay obeisances to Prabhupada in the temple in Mayapur, and no one was there. Some devotees used to occasionally see him pay his obeisances. And there was another story, a dog in Punjab who used to follow the devotees on Charitamrita all the time. And there was non-devotee dogs who would attack him. I guess no devotee in Punjab was a non-devotee, but some of them were a bit, they were a bit more violent, and they would attack this devotee dog, but he would persistently just stick with the devotees in the program every day.
Yeah, I know in the one of the Prabhupada Adi-lila books, it talks about how there was a kitten, and Prabhupada was playing with the kitten. He was with his foot, he was playing with the kitten. Devotees weren't sure, thinking, this moochie cat. And Prabhupada had his foot out and he was playing with the kitten as well. So the kitten got the mercy of the dust of Prabhupada's lotus feet. There's so many nice examples, even with the Prabhupada, being merciful to living entities. There was a bug that was on his desk, and I think it's in Hari Sori's book, and Prabhupada was observing this bug that was on his desk, and he said to Hari Sori, I think he's thirsty, he's hungry, go feed him, give him something to drink. So Hari Sori picked up the bug and took it outside. So the devotee, and what was the Jada Bharat, was it, that didn't want to step on the ants, So it's the consciousness of a very, very elevated devotee is they don't want to harm or offend any living entity. So,
maybe you can remind us of that pastime of the thing that was boring into the leg. Was it Vanya?
In the Mahabharata, and what was that the pastime where, it could be a different one, where they realised that he wasn't a Brahmana, he was actually a Kshatriya, because a Brahmana couldn't tolerate that sort of pain? Parashuram, was it? Yeah, so that one you're talking about is a different one, is it?
I'm just talking about bugs being bored into his leg.
Yeah.
And he didn't do anything about it. It's pretty merciful. Didn't kill it, didn't swipe it.
Wasn't that with Sanatana Goswami as well? He had the maggots or something. He had an open wound, and the maggots. Vasudev Datta, and the maggots were on his arm, and then he didn't want to harm them, so he let them. I'll just leave them there. Don't disturb them. Put them back in. Wow. Yeah. Wow. That was something to aspire for, isn't it? Anyway, I guess we better stop. All right. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Sri Prabhupada ki jai.